Hello, ladies and germs. So today, for your viewing pleasure, I have the Apex Fast Attack M4. Little bit of backstory here. Apex is a subsidy of Classic Army, if I understand correctly. This basically, I'm guessing, is replacing or will be replacing Classic Army Sport Line. I know Sport Lines are still around today, but I'm guessing they won't be around for much longer. I feel like they may have realized it's hard to recover from the somewhat negative connotation and reputation that Classic Army Sport Line developed back in 2009 and onward when it was first unveiled. Regardless, so this is manufactured by Classic Army. It's geared towards beginners or intermediates who want a little bit more elegance from their airsoft rifle. And I'd say it's on par with something like my ENC M16 or a SEMA non-platinum M4. Kind of in that ballpark. So just a quick overview before I dive into some pros and cons and my thoughts and just how it stands up against other manufacturers and models in its class. We'll do a quick overview. So this is a full metal Apex M4. They do come in all polymer bodies, which are a little bit cheaper. This rifle came in at $220 off Airsoft Station, which again is on par with the ENC and SEMA M4s. The one thing I will say that does kind of give it a leg up is that they added some very minor upgrades to this platform that give it a little bit of an edge over some other airsoft manufacturers and rifles in its class. Namely that it comes with a tight bore barrel stock. It comes with this flat trigger, which they marketed it as it helps, I guess, with trigger response, or the ergonomics are better. I'm not sure. It comes with a quick change spring system, which is also a huge plus. I'll get into that later. It's supposedly LiPo ready. I wouldn't really feel comfortable running anything higher than a 7.4 in this, just because it doesn't have a MOSFET as far as I know, and it doesn't have any kind of like KWA voodoo magic where it just magically allows it to run an 11.1 without issues. So again, I don't know what the internals on this are like because I haven't really opened it up. I'm assuming it's Classic Army-esque or it's a hodgepodge of other parts, but I'll get into the internals later. But that's basically an overview. So now I'll just go over the externals. So I do like that some of the pros are that it's full metal. It's overall pretty solid. There are some little, minor imperfections that I'll get into later. But, it comes with a crane stock, which allows you to fit batteries such as, it gives you a pretty diverse array of options for batteries. But I'd say the most common would probably be like a nunchuck stick type setup. It comes with these rail covers, which are nice. I was really looking for like a GWAT style rifle, and that's what kind of put me in the market for this. And I didn't want to break the bank. Maybe I was just watching too much Lone Survivor lately. But, it basically encompasses all that pretty well. It's got the trademarks. Apex, over here it has like, the selector switch engravings for safe, semi, and full auto. Comes with a flip-up rear sight. I added this optic, obviously. Hopefully I'll replace this riser eventually because I'm not really a fan of it. Obviously the M203 doesn't come with it. But that'll actually give me a good caveat into some of the cons. So I installed my M203, and the first thing I noticed was there was a little bit of like play when I went to like shoulder it and hold it by the M203. My first thought was maybe I just didn't have it screwed down or torqued down tight enough. But then I realized what was happening is that the RIS on this is actually two pieces, kind of similar to the foregrip on run-of-the-mill M4, where it's just two plastic pieces. They made this two metal pieces, which I haven't really seen in a long time. I saw it back in like olden times in 2008 on Springer M4s. This is the first time I saw it on like a mid-tier AEG. And unfortunately what happens here is, so the wiggling is just at the bottom, on the bottom half, and I think what happened, I should say, because I have since addressed this, is there is a lip here that holds, that the lower half of the RIS slides into and holds it in place. And I think the tolerances that Apex or Classic Army, whoever that manufactured this, the tolerances were a little bit too loose. So that just allowed for not a lot, but enough play that it's noticeable. I wouldn't say it's a deal breaker, but my OCD ass was hot and bothered by it. So what I did was I just took some Nashua duct tape, HVAC tape. And it's basically like aluminum tape that's adhesive and very flexible. And just ran a couple layers of some small pieces in there. You can still kind of see it. And that basically shimmed it up enough that it got rid of virtually any play that was a result of that lower half of the RIS. But that was a con. Other than that, the body is actually pretty sturdy. The upper half does not have that issue on the RIS, and I think it's because that mock gas tube in there kind of runs through the whole upper half of the RIS, and that kind of holds it in place. So at least there's that. It's not a huge prolific issue. I was worried it might have been like barrel wobble, but luckily it wasn't. The barrel is completely solid, so don't have to worry about that. My only other con is just the material that they used, the metal that they used on this rifle. You can see that there's like some scratches here. It's definitely some like run-of-the-mill pot metal that you'd see on like almost like early 2000s A&K rifles. That's kind of what it reminds me of. Disregard this. That's not a blemish. That's just leftover adhesive from the warning sticker that I ripped off. I gotta get some acetone or rubbing alcohol and get that off. But you can see like the little scratches here. Again, it's not a big deal as long as it doesn't like snap while I'm fielding it. I don't really care. But just stuff like that. If you flip it over, you can kind of see here, like these pins here, there's like already, you can tell there's like oxidation there already. You can tell like the mock bolt assembly here, it's like cheap steel. The inside, or both sides really, of the dust cover, it's just like cheap pot metal. That kind of stuff rubbed me the wrong way a little bit, but it's not a deal breaker, not for this price point. What I would say is it might be a harder pill to swallow when you compare it to that of like my ENC M16 or a SEMA non-platinum. Because my ENC M16, that thing is rock solid, and it was roughly $230. They did a really great job on the externals on that, and the internals as well. But we won't get into that. You can look at my other review if you want to see my review of my ENC M16. But on this guy, again, it's not a deal breaker for this price point, so I'm okay with it. As long as it shoots well and, you know, it's reliable, I'm not super worried about it. But with that being said, let's dive into the internals. So, Airsoft Station and basically any other airsoft retailer advertises the FPS on this as 360 to 370 FPS. That is not what it chronoed at when I got it. It was chronoing at 1.09 joules, which converted over to FPS with 0.2 gram BBs is roughly 340 FPS. Not the end of the world, and it's actually pretty common to get airsoft rifles that shoot slightly less than what they're advertised as. That's within the threshold, like, that's 30 FPS less than what it was advertised at. Not a huge deal. The big deal was that was chroned when the hop-up was turned all the way off. And if you pop this guy out, you can see it's actually got a really nice vertical style rotary hop-up, which I actually like that they're replacing the, multiple gear hop-ups that they have with typical M4 or version 2 setups with these vertical ones. They're a lot easier to kind of manhandle and whatnot when you got to change them or adjust the hop. But with this hop-up specifically, the hop-up is not great. It's not terrible, but in conjunction with the overall performance of the rifle, what happened was I had to crank it up a lot just to get it to hop 0.25 gram BBs, and I didn't have to max the hop up out, but I got it up pretty high to this point, and then I went and re-chronoed it because the BBs actually did seem to be shooting a little bit slow, and when I chronoed it with the hop up at the adjusted point that I wanted it, when I chronoed it, it was chronoing at 0.65 joules, which is like 270 FPS, and that wasn't going to do. So I debated sending it back, and then I remembered it had a quick change spring. So I pulled this guy out after I took the buffer tube out and pulled the spring out and spring guide out. And I'm guessing this is probably like an M90 spring, and I'm guessing it was probably an M110 spring that I had from my old Cybergun M249 after I HPA'd it. And I just threw that guy in, and that bumped the FPS up. I tried chronoing it with the hop-up completely disengaged, and it chronoed around 1.15 joules, which is about 360 to 370 FPS, which is what it's advertised at. And then when I adjusted the hop-up to where I needed it to be, it was chronoing in at about 0.91 to 0.95 joules, which is like 320 FPS. With twos, not great, but it's not the end of the world. But just be mindful of that when you look into this. If you're a sucker for FPS or a real stickler for FPS, and just out-of-box performance in conjunction with that, you might have a bad time with this. But I guess you could put a stronger spring in. I didn't want to overdo it. Other than that, with the internals, the stock shimming, it's not the worst, but it's not great. It's definitely leaves a little bit to be desired, but it's not god-awful. I will say that the trigger response is super snappy, even with a 7.4 LiPo battery. And, the motor seems pretty healthy. When I put that larger spring in, I did notice that the handguard got slightly warm. It wasn't, like, hot to the point where you would say, okay, something's wrong, something's going to break. But it did get a little warmer. But the motor doesn't seem to struggle to pull the spring. And so I think the motor that comes with it is actually pretty good. But that's basically it. I mean, overall, as I said, it comes with a tight bore barrel. Couldn't really assess the groupings because it was a little windy, but I did see that it was getting some pretty good range when I shot it yesterday. I'd say it's probably accurate out to like 180 to 190 feet, which isn't bad for, an M4 at this price point. I'm not sure if I use heavier BBs, if that would help to show the tight bore would shine a little more, but it is what it is. I just wanted to have, again, a GWAT style M4 in my airsoft armory, so that's kind of what prompted this purchase. So I'll just close it because we're going on almost 15 minutes now, but overall, it seems like a good rifle. I may do a follow-up after I field it. I'm going to Code Orange, I think that's what it's called, whatever Milsim Otherworld Milsim is hosting in a couple weeks out in Pennsylvania. And I'm probably going to field this guy as my primary, so maybe I'll report back when I'm done. But those are basically my initial thoughts on the Apex. Wow, it's been a long day at work, guys. I'm sorry. On the Apex Fast Attack M4. Talk to you soon.